Okay, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Out and Equal conference session on accelerating innovation through diversity. Now, this session is focused on amplifying the return on equity by investing in the LGBTQ plus community. By joining this session, you probably already have an understanding that diversity is important, and you're looking for new ways to understand why investing in the LGBTQ plus community in particular matters for your business. I'm Bill Osborne, Senior Vice President of Total Quality and Operations for Boeing Defense, Space, and Security. Now, I'm also the executive sponsor for the Boeing Employees Pride Alliance organization, which is one of our Boeing resource groups, and I'm honored to moderate today's session. Throughout my career, I've experienced firsthand how investing in diversity is not just good for people, but good for business. Supporting equity, diversity, and inclusion pays dividends in terms of driving the diversity of thought that companies need to fuel innovation and performance, and to also build an inclusive culture. Now, to capture these benefits, we have to start from a place that clearly rejects intolerance, a foundation that does not permit harassment or hate in any form can allow all of us to build a stronger, more inclusive community where everyone feels valued. Now, before we dive into this important topic, let's begin with some logistics and a few introductions. Audience members have been muted upon entry and will stay on mute throughout the session to allow for a high quality recording. We'll begin with a panel discussion and end with questions from the audience. Throughout the session, please drop your questions into the chat box to be compiled for the Q&A portion of the agenda. And now for introductions. I'm pleased to welcome four esteemed panelists who are leading the way in advancing equity, diversity, and inclusion, and investing in the LGBTQ plus community. And I'd like to start with Mike D'Ambrose. Mike?
Yeah, I'm Mike D'Ambrose. I am the Chief Human Resource Officer for Boeing. I've been with Boeing for about a year and a half. I am just so excited to be part of this panel and be part of this whole session. I just can't wait to be an ever stronger voice for this community as we drive both diversity and inclusion as a competitive advantage for Boeing and for all companies across the world. I would tell you just one other thing about me is that I am particularly, proud of efforts that I've been a part of in my lifetime. And one of them is the creation of the industry-wide consortium known as Together We Grow, which actually has 28 companies in the entire ag industry bound together, actually not competing over diversity, inclusion, and equity, but actually collaborating to show what collaboration can occur. And I'm excited to show what Boeing is going to do in the future. So thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Mike. And now Sarah Bowen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Bowen. I have the privilege of leading Boeing's Global Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team. And I, too, am thrilled to be here. I'm so pumped for this panel. It's a privilege to be sharing this space with you, Bill, and Mike, and Jay, and Justin. Thanks to my fellow panelists. Thanks to the Boeing BEPA team and Out and Equal. Just such a great forum. And by the way, I love the title of this, Accelerating Innovation Through Diversity, because we don't have innovation if we don't have diversity. So excited. Thank you, Bill. Back to you.
Thank you, Sarah. And now, Jay Ricciero.
Good morning from Las Vegas, everybody. My name is Jay Ricciero. I lead diversity, equity, inclusion for a company called AEG Worldwide. And I want to say thank you to Boeing and BEPA for inviting me to join this conversation. I truly believe in collaborating across industries, and I've been in this space for 20 years. And the only way I've been successful is by talking to folks from different communities, different industries. And Out and Equal is actually the last conference I attended in person in 2019. So I'm happy to be back with everybody, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation today.
Thank you, Jay. And now Justin Leach.
Hi, I'm Justin Leach, and for 10 years as the manager of public relations at Toyota, I also had a unique opportunity to manage most of our LGBT charitable contributions for the company, as well as develop the company's first LGBTQ cause marketing campaign, which is still in use. And I also have the honor of being one of the founding members of Toyota's North American Advisory Council for our employee resource groups. So I'm excited to be here today. I think we've got a lot of great topics to cover. It's just really great to see everybody here. And like Jay, I think one of my last conferences in person was out in Equal. I've been to a number of them. These are great. I'm enjoying the panels that I've seen so far, or the panelists I've seen so far. So hopefully we'll have time for questions. If I can answer any questions about some of the topics that we're covering later. I'm also available later, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. So thanks.
Thank you, Justin. So let's dive right in. And just to make sure we get a good interplay going, I'm gonna try to pose each question to two of our panelists. So let's start with Sarah and Jay. Sarah, why is it important for corporations to invest in the LGBTQ efforts, events, and organizations?
Okay, great question. Thanks, Bill. So let's start with a pretty common goal. If our goal is to have a thriving workforce where people can show up authentically, contribute their unique perspective, put their ideas on the table, if that's our goal, and I can't imagine any company not having that as their goal, then we have to invest in our people. And we have to pay particular attention to the people who come from groups that have been historically oppressed, marginalized, and shut out. Investing in our LGBTQ community is an investment in our people. There's that long-held maxim that when we solve for those that are oppressed and marginalized, we solve for the entire community. And companies these days are not just about building widgets and providing jobs. We're citizens of our communities, and we have a responsibility to advance the health and well-being of our communities. So when I think about some of the investments that Boeing has made in our LGBTQ+ community, those investments reap benefits beyond the community. So putting in place eligibility for benefits for both same and opposite sex partners, right? That I think originally was designed to benefit our LGBT partners, and yet it benefits people outside of the community as well. The benefits we put in place to support the gender transitions of employees is not only a very kind of special support and benefit we provide to that community, but it signals to the rest of our workforce, we see you, we recognize you and your unique situation, and we're here to support you because we care about you and we want you to be able to be your full self at work. All of these things that we do we view as our responsibility to provide that atmosphere of support and caring, because our people are our absolute greatest asset, and every investment we make in them returns to us tenfold. That's what I would say. Jay, what do you think?
Wow, that's a tough act to follow, Sarah. So I'm gonna try to answer it from a couple of different perspectives. I think number one, as a diversity practitioner, I believe that creating a sense of belonging for employees will benefit the company, whether it's creating more engagement for all of our employees to bring their full selves, as Sarah said, but also, for us at AEG, we look at the internal workforce, we look at our fans who attend our events, we look at our athletes who partner with us, we look at our sponsorships. And what I'm seeing in the industry is even our sponsors are really expecting this, right? So they're asking us to create partnerships with purpose, and that purpose has to include diversity, equity, and inclusion in it. So it's really important from a recruitment standpoint, a retention standpoint, but then again, from a business standpoint, if your partners don't want to work with you because you don't have an inclusive environment, and really focusing on all aspects of diversity, whether it's ethnic diversity, gender diversity, LGBTQ status, veteran status, all of that is really important. And I think what we're seeing also is from a supplier standpoint, we need to be inclusive across the board so we can look at it from a workplace external piece around community involvement and supplier diversity.
I think we lost your audio. At least I lost your audio. for a
I did
second
too.
there,
I don't
Jay. Am
know
I
if
the
it was
only one
just
who
me.
lost it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Jay, I lost your audio there, Jay. Okay, let's move on. Hopefully we'll solve that technical problem in the interim. My next question goes to both Mike and Justin. And Mike, what obstacles have you faced when advocating for LGBTQ plus investments, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, such a great question. You know, when I think about where we are today, I would tell you, I think most companies get it. They understand that we need to be, and I think all companies figure out that we need to be the employer of choice for LGBTQ and for all groups. But it wasn't always that way. And I would tell you, for a long time, these were HR initiatives that were driven from the HR group, and you know, the businesses kind of, I would say, maybe weren't as proactive as they needed to be. But I'll tell you, what's always worked and what's worked for me and what's working now is the business case for not just driving innovation, but for driving performance. The reality is, we're at a period of time in our planet where diversity, inclusion, and equity is critical to the success, not just of our businesses, but of the world we live in. We need to celebrate the differences that make us great, because those differences are the ones that create innovation. And I could tell you, at Boeing, we want to be the employer of choice for this community and for every community. And I think what's really happened, and it's exciting, this isn't an HR initiative. The board talks about it at every board meeting. Our business presidents are held accountable because they want to be held accountable, because they see the outcomes they achieve when they have diversity. They recognize that when we celebrate the differences, we actually all become better. Everybody's better. And I think that's what's different today. And what we need to do forward is figure out, how do we leverage the desire for those differences, the desire for the voices of all of us, everything that makes us great and different, and become the, you know, the employer of choice, become the place where everybody from this community and others that are different, and make sure that we're all coming together so that we share authentically ourselves, we share our ideas, we share our thoughts. And in fact, at Boeing, I'll tell you what I'm most proud of is a program called Seek, Speak, Listen. And what we've committed to as an executive team is, we not only seek people's voices, but we will not move forward making decisions until we hear the voices of those around us, because we know that the voices that are different, the different perspectives from different backgrounds, different lifestyles, help us make better decisions and make us more successful. Justin, what do you think?
No, absolutely, Mike. That's a really good point, especially around retention and recruitment efforts. You know, it's funny. I commissioned some survey work a few years back, when we were looking at creating Toyota's first LGBT cause marketing campaign, which is called Love Drives. And one of the questions I threw in there was around employment, well, a number of questions. And we had in this survey, not just LGBTQ folks, but also allies. And so for the allies in particular, the question essentially was, would you work for an employer you believed to be discriminatory towards the LGBTQ community? And the vast majority of those allies who did not identify as LGBTQ said, no, I would not. So these are folks who are saying, look, I don't want to work at a place like that. Even though I'm not LGBTQ, I don't want to work at a place like that. So it's become a real barometer, if you will, for a lot of folks outside the LGBTQ community. And so kind of getting back to your question of what has been a challenge, I think it's been, in some ways, with at the executive level, there is a belief that, you know, our company is doing great in the diversity space, but maybe not always recognizing the importance of focusing in on the LGBTQ community and the ally community and how important that is, whether it's marketing or HR policies, these sort of things, because it's not just the LGBTQ community that you're targeting, right? It's all those folks who are supporters and allies and champions who are watching what we as companies are doing. And so I think making that business case, as Mike mentioned, is really, really critical. So for us at Twitter, that involved, like I said, creating some background work for us, really getting the surveys that I mentioned that we did, not just our own proprietary work, not just that we were grabbing off the internet or something or somebody else's work. It really had to be reflective of our community, our company, our consumers, for some of our VPs to really have that aha moment, if you will. So I think making that business case has been a bit of a challenge for some, because they think, wait, we're doing great in the diversity space. But really, the LGBTQ community wants to see themselves reflected in marketing. They want to see themselves not isolated in that marketing either, right? We all have friends and family. We want to be seen as part of the community. So not just two women or two men engaging in something with the product, but the whole world around them and being incorporated into that. And again, as I said, it's really showing those execs that business case of, hey, it's not just this small community that you think it is. It's the broader community that supports them, and how that's become a real litmus test in a lot of ways, for not just what we're buying, but for where we're working.
Thank you, Justin. Let's move on to the next question. And Jay, I know you may have a spotty Wi-Fi connection, but we absolutely have to have your input. So I'm going to pose this next question to you and Mike.
All right.
How can any employee contribute to the LGBTQ community to optimize a company's return on equity? Furthermore, as someone in a leadership role, what advice would you offer the employee resource groups in your company and their executive champions to obtain support for LGBTQ plus community investments?
Great. That's a wonderful question. So I think I'll take the second part of it first. So I am actually known as the godmother of employee network groups for Toyota, because that was my very first proposal 20 something years ago. Justin and I worked together. Our third group was actually the LGBTQ group at Toyota. And we're talking 20 years ago. So the world was a little different then. Well, what we tried to do in terms of providing voice for the employees is sort of a top-down and bottom-up approach. So there was a lot of education, formal and informal, around the business case for diversity, like Justin was talking.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Or go to conferences. Is it spotty again?
Yeah, it is.
Keep going though, Jay. I think we've got you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was talking about how important it is to have the informal education for executives, attending conferences like this, going to workshops, and then really talking to your LGBTQ employees. This listening part of the work is really critical, because this is about, understanding it intellectually, right? So getting the facts and the figures and all the data.
Uh-oh.
Why is this important to talk about? Why is it important to talk about being LGBTQ as a customer, as a fan, as an employee? All of that will really help in executives understanding the business case and getting them involved. So I was talking about sort of intellectually is the facts, the head part. The heart is really understanding it at an emotional level. And that translates to the hands, where executives can take action and do something, right? And so it really is about our employees leading the executives to what is that action that we need from a diversity standpoint. And I do think it's important, employee network groups are here to provide voice for everyone. And that's the value that they add. The company is investing time in you. We need you. We need your voice to really be active. So I'll stop talking now.
Mike?
Well, yeah. It's a hard act to follow. She's pretty amazing. For me, we have, when you think about how do employees contribute, we have a code of conduct and people sign it, and so does every company. But what's more important is what we believe is that leadership behavior is the one that matters critically, and what we tolerate and don't. And I can tell you, we've been very transparent about that. We're proud of our transparency around that, but we believe in a culture of care. We believe that we actually are an organization that cares so much about the person next to us that we want them to be successful, not just in their career, but in life. And so for me, what we do is we're working hard to think about who joins our company, because we expect people to be with us for their whole career. We expect people to have the values that not only say diversity is okay and inclusion is just okay. We want them to be champions of diversity and inclusion. And our resource groups are a critical part of our strategy. In my short tenure with Boeing, I will tell you one of the things I've observed is that while it's so critical to hear the voices of everybody on those BRGs, so I would say, please sign up, please be active, please, be a participant in the programs, but also help us prioritize when feedback comes. Because what often happens, and it's happening now, there's so many proposed actions that it's hard to say, well, what are the 3 most important ones that would make the biggest difference? The challenge here is that there is no book to go to how to get this right. I could look at companies, some get some of this right, some doesn't mean you could take what they did and move it to you and it's going to work for you. So we need, our own BRGs. We need to hear the voice of our people. We need everyone on this call to share. We need other companies to share, because there isn't a playbook that says, do these 3 things and you will be successful. Doesn't work. So what I would say is, when you work together and you think of not only the voice, but ideas, things that could make us better, drive inclusion, drive the diversity we need to succeed, and create equity, prioritize those thoughts. And then here's the last thought I have on this, which is always hard. Reserve the right to always get smarter, because when we do something and it's might be working a little bit, but maybe not, and then we kind of stick with it, it's okay to say, we're going to do something new. We're going to try something different, because I think in those differences, in the things we implement, we'll see even greater success. So never be satisfied with where we are, never be satisfied with the status quo, always drive to prioritize actions and help us to create the environment that we all want. And I can tell you this, every business needs this now more than ever. This is an opportunity to drive diversity, equity, inclusion in our world that hasn't existed in my career. And I can tell you, we can't miss this opportunity. So bring your thoughts, bring your ideas, bring your voice to everything.
Thank you, Mike. So this next question I'll pose to Justin and Sarah. Will you please share how your organization has embraced social media, storytelling, and other forms of communication to amplify stories and spread awareness and visibility for the LGBTQ+ community?
I mean, I can go first real quickly. I think, especially in this past, year and a half, we've learned the value of social media for precisely that, amplifying that message out there. But kind of in the before times, if you will, one of my sort of sayings was, as I was working with other nonprofit groups, I often would say, let's not do another hotel ballroom chicken dinner. Let's really try to reach those folks who would be supporters or who are supporters, but maybe can't attend an event. So I really tried to get us away from being so event driven and really work towards being more in those social media platforms. I think a fun example, the Trevor Project. A lot of folks will know the Trevor Project. Their largest annual event is Trevor Live. They do one in Los Angeles and one in New York, but the Los Angeles one is very celebrity driven. And we created a live stream from the red carpet where we had celebrity hosts who would interview folks as they were coming down the red carpet. And for the home viewer, the screen would have, obviously the content that you're watching, but along the bottom, folks could write in comments about what they were seeing and kind of share and create a little community there. They could also pose questions for the host to ask the next celebrity coming up, your favorite actors, whatever. And then also on the side, there would be links to resources and ways to donate. And so we really tried to create more than just a, hey, come watch this opportunity. It was really how can we engage them and get them involved and hopefully bring in new long-term supporters. Everything that we did at Toyota was really about leveraging our name and our dollars, not just to write a check. We weren't, checkbook philanthropists in that sense, but it was really about how can we leverage our dollars and help create that community that goes beyond just that one event or campaign. And so, also just to touch back on, I think it was Mike who mentioned, the business case around your employee resource groups, use those as a way to be sort of an incubator or a little lab and try innovative things in that space. And then that helps build that business case, right? Then you've got metrics, you've got some things to show, and it sort of snowballs over time. So, we did a lot of stuff with Snapchat and, all the platforms, but really it came from a let's experiment sort of area. And that's how we were able to grow the program over the years and end up going from, like with the Trevor Project, what started with a $5,000 table at an event. And I said, I can't really grow the tables more. I can only get so many tables, if I'm going to be a sponsor, to $100,000 with something else that was more interactive and reached a broader audience.
Well, I have to say, Justin, while I do miss connecting face to face with people, I can't say that I really miss the chicken dinners. But social media has really become the gathering place for people to share the stories of their workforce. And this journey to inclusion is one that for some comes quite naturally. Probably many people on this call, it's come naturally to you, but for others, it's more of a journey. And as Jay was talking about the head, heart, hands, we've got to capture heads and hearts before we can expect the hands to do the work. And so one of the most powerful things that we've been able to do through social media is tell the stories of our people, real Boeing teammates who have, just such diverse lived experiences, and coming through those and all of what they learn, and then they're able then to contribute to their team and their ideas. Those stories always capture my heart, and I have found them to be, generating quite a bit of activity on LinkedIn and other platforms. I think our stories have generated more than 1 million views over the past year, and our LGBTQ stories perform extremely well. We shared the story. One of the stories, my favorites, is about one of our allies who we just awarded an Ally of the Year award. He's the father of a transgender son, and he was brought up in a very, conservative household, and he had to confront his own biases and his own upbringing in order to not lose his son. And he told that story in such a courageous and vulnerable way. It was just such an inspiration to so many people, and it makes you realize that heart connection is when we start to de-other each other, right? That's the moment when we start to see our similarities rather than our differences. It's the moment we have our own motivation to step into this conversation and do something together. So I think the storytelling through social media is really, really powerful. And it's one of the things that we will continue to do. So that's, social media has its place. And I think if we can use it effectively to de-other our lived experiences, to build connection and awareness, then that is a really powerful tool for us.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, this next question is a pretty tough one, and I'm going to direct it to both Jay and Sarah. How do you navigate doing business with your customers if you know they have policies or local laws that negatively affect the LGBTQ plus community? And let's start with Jay.
So
Jay, we lost your audio. Can you? Yeah. Can you
maybe
restart?
Go off video again? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Jay.
How about now? Y'all hear me?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Great. So I think I'm going to go back to what I was talking about with regards to partners and partnering with purpose. That's an expectation now. And I think some companies need to take a stand that's so strong that if a partner or a customer does not have inclusive policies, practices, or anything that sort of negatively impacts the LGBTQ plus community, we need to step away. We need to be brave enough to do that, because if we as a company believe in diversity, equity, inclusion fully, that's one of the things that we're doing. And frankly, at AEG, we're starting to take that action with some of our partners. I do think there's an opportunity to coach and to mentor and to guide potential customers as well. And so that's, of course, where we want to start. However, this work is too important to our employee body and to our customers. And I think, I don't sit in HR. I actually directly report to the Chief Administrative Officer. So we think about what we're doing from a supplier diversity standpoint, and we try to mentor all of our diverse suppliers and build up sort of the businesses around our customers so that they can feel supported. So I think it's two things. Number one, take a stand and be clear about who you are as an organization. And number two, offer mentoring and coaching to potential customers that need some help.
Sarah?
Yeah, I agree, Jay. Yeah, it is a tough question, Bill. Thank you for giving it to Jay and to me. Here's what I'd say. Thanks, Mike. When you're a Boeing employee, you are a Boeing employee wherever you sit. Whether you sit in Seattle or Charleston or Dubai or India or Australia, our values, our culture, our code of conduct, that's our guiding light. So that's first and foremost. And everywhere we are and everywhere we do business, we've got to create that psychological safety and physical safety within our four walls. So that's thing number one. And thing number two is we will continue to advocate at state, local, and national levels for policies that support and protect our people so that they can come to work as their full authentic selves and do their best work. And then the third thing I'd say is, safety is a very real thing, both psychological and physical safety. And along with the other things I mentioned, it's paramount that we keep our people safe in whatever setting they're in.
Thank you, Sarah. This is going to be our last question for the panel before we open it up for questions from the chat room. So if you haven't submitted your questions already, please do so now. And I'm going to direct this question to each of our panelists. Let's start with Mike, then Jay, Sarah, and then Justin. Looking at the future, what investments do you plan to make in the LGBTQ plus community for your company and also for yourself? Mike?
Yeah, I would tell you, it's important for me personally that we are the employer of choice for this community. And so when I think about, we want to make sure that we're the place where people feel safe, respected, and actually empowered to be their authentic selves every day, every minute. And we're doing that in a couple of ways. One is we're really determined to make sure that every voice matters and that we treat everyone with the inclusive culture that we demand from our teams. And I would tell you, that's one we're 100% committed to and determined as a leadership team to make happen. I also would tell you that, and I know we've talked about seek, speak, listen, and I think if I talk about that anymore, I'm going to be, get booed off the stage. But there is nothing more powerful than respecting each person's voice and seeking that voice out. I used to think in my life that it was enough to tell people, well, speak up, it's okay. It's not. It takes more than that. It takes really a company and leaders and people at every single level to demonstrate that they care about the person next to them, and they care by demonstrating that their voice matters. And then the other thing that we're doing as a company, which I think is critically important, is we are not satisfied that you would have a great career here. We take that as just the entry level of what success looks like. At Boeing, we believe that people come here, have great careers, and lead great lives. They celebrate the differences of who they are, and they have a great life. And what they say is, I work at Boeing, and I have a great career. People are investing in me, making me the best I can be, giving me opportunities that I can succeed, but I also recognize that I'm a whole person and that I have to lead a great life. And I think that's where we're going. we're also going to be looking for advice from our BRGs and from our colleagues on what we could do to be even more competitive, to be even more inclusive, so that we actually have not only the diversity that we want, but that we recognize that the diversity drives business outcomes, that it drives success. And we're going to continue to work on that. So whether that be individual coaching, whether that be the use of technology, I will tell you that in this space, we are working hard on artificial intelligence, virtual reality, to actually demonstrate, so that people can look and challenge their own biases, which we all have, and make sure that we can help eliminate those and understand them, so that we understand and respect everyone. So way more to come, but I would tell you, the future from what I can see has never been brighter. There's more opportunity than ever, and a greater commitment for success I don't think I've ever seen in my entire career in HR.
Thank you, Mike. Jay?
Thank you for that question. I think, personally, from an AEG standpoint, one thing we're going to do is we're going to continue our executive education and ensure that the topics of how to lead with empathy and talking about differences that include everything, including the LGBTQ community, that's really important for us. Connecting the dots for our leaders to have them understand that is one of my goals. And our employee network groups are very young. We've only been around since 2019. And we just launched our Europe group. So now what I'm doing is making sure that they're collaborating across the pond, so we can talk about what are the issues that are specific to our folks that work out in Europe, and what's different here in North America, and really share best practices, but understand the differences, and how do we need to pivot some of our support for the LGBTQ community. And I think from a community standpoint, I'm also really encouraging our company to move beyond just K through 12 in terms of focusing from a community standpoint. And I'm pulling on our employee network group to ensure that we're looking at LGBTQ focused community organizations. And now that things are opening up again, if we have volunteer opportunities, I want to encourage our allies to go out and volunteer for these organizations, to really feel what it's like to represent the company and create a sense of belonging both inside the company and outside. And last, I'm just going to add one thing to end with from a business standpoint. We have been mentoring an LGBTQ woman-owned business that does canned wines, and I'm not going to plug it, but what we've done from a business standpoint is we put them in some of our arenas and provided that as an opportunity for our fans to purchase that. And so you've got to think about it on all levels, right? The internal piece, the supplier diversity piece, as well as the community piece.
Thank you, Jay. Sarah?
Well, I've got a, I'm not going to boo you off the stage, Mike, with Seek, Speak, Listen. In fact, I'm going to double down on it and say that, the best ideas and the greatest progress we make happens when we as leaders listen, because the best ideas are out there. Our teammates have those ideas. Bill, you actually, as the champion of BIPA, and listening to that group, you're ordering 2,000 ally glasses for our leaders to wear on the factory floor, safety goggles displaying the ally colors. That's something that you are doing as a champion because the BIPA team spoke up to you and you listened. The changes we've made to benefits, the changes we're making around virtual reality and the other things that Mike mentioned, we're doing because people with great ideas spoke up to us, and we know that as leaders, it's our job to listen. And I think that's when the most important and transformative change occurs. I could go on and on about the things we're doing and what we're excited about. I'll just mention two, besides the ally glasses. But one is we're going to have our first trans summit this coming year, and that's going to be exciting. We're really thrilled about that. And we're going to double down on allyship, and we're going to build an executive ally program and do a lot more in that space. So it's going to be fantastic.
Thanks, Sarah. And Justin?
I'll be really quick. I think it's really important to remember that we're all allies in this community. So we all have different experiences. We're all coming from different places. So we may talk about the LGBTQ community and the ally community, but really even within the LGBTQ plus community, we need to be allies with one another. So going back to some of the earlier comments of continuing your own education, that's so important. So, my commitment to myself is to always learn more about the lesbian experiences, the bisexual experience, the transgender experiences, the queer experiences, all those letters, right, that we have, I might be part of that group, but it doesn't mean I necessarily understand every one of those groups well enough to really be the champion that I want to be for all of us. So for me, that's the investment that I always try to ensure I'm making in my own sort of personal education, so that I can be that voice for the broader community.
Thanks, Justin. I think we all could use that commitment to lifelong learning. I'm going to turn to the chat room now for questions. And our first question is this, and I'll direct this one to Sarah. So in your experience, what in the business case helped with those aha moments? We often hear that we need to show the business case, but can you point to some specifics that help the business case succeed for LGBTQ investments?
Yeah, this is such a great question, and the answer is always evolving. But I think, you know, the primary thing is we've got to get people to see what's in it for them. That the pie is not fixed in size, the pie actually can get bigger. And there are so many examples of how diversity combats groupthink, right? You're familiar with this concept of groupthink. You get like-minded people with similar backgrounds in a room together. They drive quickly to consensus, and oftentimes they're making misinformed or ill-informed decisions that lead to bad results. When you get diversity in there and people have a voice in that decision, the decision can be 87% better, right, than without that diversity. Imagine a company that is consistently making decisions that are 87% better. Think of the opportunity that creates, the growth it creates. Your firm goes from this size to this size because suddenly you've got more innovative products, you've got customers banging on your door. Sales revenues go up 15 times when you've got at least gender diverse teams. There are just countless examples of this. And so for me, I'm so passionate about this, but the case is so compelling and clear. When you have a diverse and inclusive team, you will make better decisions. You will be more successful. You as an individual, whatever your race, background, sexual orientation, you name it, you will be a better thinker and decision maker yourself because you'll be informed by these diverse perspectives. So there really is something in it for everyone, and there's certainly something in it for companies. So I like to paint that picture and really get people to understand this pie is not fixed in size. This pie can only get bigger with more opportunity for everyone if we do it right.
So I'd just like to expand and ask if any of our other panelists have experience with this, where they've seen diverse teams that really outperform homogeneous teams that they could speak to.
Yeah, Bill, I'd love to chime in here, because I tell you where it shows up is interesting, and I think this is one of the lessons learned. It's when companies look at decisions that didn't go well. It's when they do the postmortems, and then they say, so how did we come to this conclusion and make this decision? And then they really challenge themselves about, was there the diversity in the room that would have caused us to think differently? And the answer almost always is really what Sarah talked about, groupthink. And I think what drives it, and what's a practice that we're doing now, which I think is important, is we're really challenging ourselves when we look at decisions that didn't go well and saying, so what did we learn from it? What will make us a better company, a better person, a better leader, because it didn't go well? They're gifts. And I think part of that is saying, did we have the diversity of thought? Did we seek each person's voice? Did we challenge ourselves? In fact, even more and more, it's becoming more so prevalent that actually, in sometimes teams will actually say, we have to take a contrarian view, and they'll actually assign that to somebody else. That's because they don't have the diversity in the room they need, and that's not acceptable. You need the passionate diversity in the room to make great decisions. And what's happening today is that CEOs, boards, executives on the leadership teams at the highest levels not only get it, but they're fighting to get the diversity to make sure that they're successful.
Thanks, Mike. Second question that we have from the chat room is, What have you seen as best in class for investing in the LGBTQ plus community within the non-office work settings, such as manufacturing facilities? And this extends to all associate relations groups. How can we be more visible at this level? And I'm gonna maybe direct that question to Ray to start us off.
Would that be for Jay to start you off?
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me for Jay. Sorry about that, Jay.
That's okay.
I was wondering who.
I know, surprise, Ray. I'm going to go off camera because I think this is a really important question and I don't want to lose my audio. So when we launched employee network groups at Toyota, I actually called them Toyota Business Partnering Groups. And it was very intentional to use that terminology. So I think whether you're in an office environment or your manufacturing facility, what's important is that you can connect to what the business needs. So I asked all of my groups to not only look at sort of the internal piece around supporting employees, but also what does the business need? Are there opportunities to increase revenue? Are there opportunities to create more safety and reduce accidents? Can your network group help the business get smarter at solving those kinds of problems? And I challenge them now today to look at what are the environmental opportunities that we need to look at to really be more kind to the planet. So not only is it about increasing revenue and cost reduction, but it's supporting the company at a corporate social responsibility level. And I think that's what our network groups can do, whether you're in a manufacturing facility or in an office.
Thanks. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Jay. Well, any of our other panelists like to chime in on that one?
It's a really great question. I think it's important. Oh, sorry.
Well, Justin, I'm sorry. I was going to be a little unorthodox and flip the question actually back to our moderator, Bill, who leads a really significant manufacturing team and also is the champion of our LGBTQ employee resource group. And Bill, you've only been in this champion role a short time, but you've already made a big difference. Is there anything you would share?
Well, you know, our focus in manufacturing, the first step in our plan is to make sure that we have a zero tolerance environment for hate. And one of the most important initiatives that we wanted to bring forward is to make public our allyship. You know, one of the things that the feedback that I heard from the community when I first started engaging was that there are a lot of allies that are in the closet. And so what we wanted to do is to bring the allies out of the closet. And that's one of the reasons that we used our safety, ally safety glass program, is to bring those allies out and make them visible. And, you know, we talked about what we felt was important, that what we wanted to stand for, and we asked people to volunteer. We didn't mandate it. We asked people, if you believe in the values that we're espousing about inclusiveness and valuing all of our communities, and if you stand for a zero tolerance environment for hate, we invite you to wear these purple safety glasses. And we got an overwhelming response. We put in an order for 2,000. We have demand right now for about 5,000 people across Boeing in our manufacturing organization that want to come out of the closet as allies. So we think that's the first step. And I would tell you, it's probably one of the best investments we've made in manufacturing.
Well, I can't wait to get my glasses, Bill, so I'm ready.
Thanks, Mike. I have another question from the chat room, and I'm going to try to expand it a bit. The question is, how do you approach making official stances on political issues when you're an entity that is heavily regulated by an overwhelmingly conservative state or legislature? And, you know, I just want to amplify this a bit, because we are actually seeing companies now take, you know, very important stands on issues that just, you know, 5 to 10 years ago would have been considered, you know, too controversial to touch. And I think that, you know, we're starting to see a change where employees, customers are expecting more and more from corporations in trying to navigate these difficult political issues. So I'd love to hear, the panelists expound on that. How is your company approaching these difficult political issues?
Well, I'll jump in here if I could. Yeah, I mean, Bill, it's a tough question and it's a tough time. I'd say, first of all, we've taken the position that we want people to share their views with the politicians and the people that help make the laws that govern our society. And so voting is something that we're very, very supportive of, and we think is a critical part of who we are as a company and what the expectations we have for all of us. And I have to say, the debates that I've been part of about where do we put our voice, where do we step in and not, has been really a tough time. I mean, it's been a tough call. I think where we say is when it's social injustice, we try to have a voice. When it's a law that's been passed or something that politicians who were elected do, then we think about it a little differently. We say, look, this is what we have the democratic process for. So and I don't think there's a blanket answer here, by the way. I think that it's about issue by issue, and that's what really happens. There's something occurring, and then we have a conversation about how do we use our voice? How do we use who we are? And how will it benefit the issue? We're concerned with making sure that everyone lives a great life. We are concerned with having a society where everyone is respected and treated in a, not just inclusive, but in a fair way. And I'd say that's a real, I don't think there is ever going to be a blanket answer. I think it's going to be an issue by issue discussion, and each company has to make its own decision on how to handle it.
Justin, can you give us your point of view from your experience at Toyota?
I think it's really important for those business partnering groups to speak up if there are issues that they feel impact the business side of your company, and certainly the recruitment and retention efforts, right? To Mike's point, social injustice issues may, by some companies, be something that they don't want to touch or they do want to get involved with, but really it's, is it impacting your bottom line? And retention and recruitment is part of your bottom line. So, when I was working with Toyota to move our North American headquarters from California to Texas, that was a real concern for some of our employees. And, Toyota is not one of those companies that's super visible when it comes to political issues, but on the back end, certainly we were working with local leaders on how to mitigate some of the concerns and issues that were coming up. And I think for a lot of your companies out there, you may not see them visibly doing something, but if they're working on the back end, working with their local leaders, I think that makes a huge difference. And we may not always get to see that, but it is happening.
Thanks, Justin.
That's good.
I have one more question here. Are any of your companies formally including D&I work into performance rating metrics that impact upward mobility and compensation? People, I guess, are looking to understand what's working. So Jay, can you start us off with that one?
Sure, I'd love to. I've been with AEG for just over 2 years. And so in my long-term plan, this is going to be a part of leading an employee network group will be a requirement for getting promoted. That's really what my long-term plan is. I think a lot of companies will tie compensation to executives' performance around some sort of diversity metric. It may be around representation metrics. It may be around how are they doing on their internal culture surveys. So I think that's important. That's something that's not groundbreaking, but it's important. But what I'd like to do is really make it a part of the development of our leaders, so that in order to move to the next level, you have to show some sort of leadership around diversity, equity, inclusion. So I'm expanding my staff for all of you Out and Equal folks who are looking for jobs next year. I'm looking for a DEI analyst that's going to help me develop my scorecards and my KPIs and my metrics so they can start really measuring this and make a case for tying compensation as well as leadership metrics to diversity, equity, inclusion actions.
Thanks, Jay. Mike, can you answer for Boeing, please?
Oh, you bet I can. You know, this is another chance for me to talk about Seek, Speak, Listen. But when we think about individual leadership and individual, qualities, we are looking at how people are not just embracing, but championing Seek, Speak, and Listen. And we're going to be assessing people against that, and it's going to impact, rewards for people. But more importantly than anything else, and I do think, we are committed to a strategy of having, rewards aligned with DE&I, but even more so, our thinking is about transparency, and that's what I'm so excited about. I mean, today, our board meeting has our business unit presidents who are presenting not just their aggregate numbers. In a big company, averages always look, okay, it's an average, but not. They're looking at the locations that are not working well, where we're not happy with the outcomes we're seeing, and they're presenting to the full board about what they're doing and actions they're taking to make it better. And that same transparency is one that we believe in every way. That's why when you look at our DE&I report, you'll see that we were extremely transparent, and we're committed to that stake in the ground and continuing to be held accountable for the outcomes we seek. So I would tell you, yes, on rewards, but more importantly, it's embedded in the culture at Boeing. At Boeing, it is critical that you are a leader that actually drives diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in fact, when the board most recently met with me, and we spent the better part of a significant amount of time in our board meeting talking about the attributes that we should assess leaders against for succession, not just for our CEO, but for all of our leaders across the enterprise. You'll see it there, right there. It's, are you a champion of driving the diversity, equity, and inclusion that we seek? And if you're not going to be one of the leaders at the company.
Well, thank you, Mike. Well, listen, we only have about a couple of minutes left, so that unfortunately that'll have to be the last question. I do want to say that although we weren't able to get to every question in the chat box, we are committed to answering all the inquiries. So if you could forward your question to our producer's email, ConnellA.Clark@Boeing.com. That email is in the chat box. We will get back to you with a clear response from one of our 4 panelists. And I want to thank each of these panelists. This has been a really stimulating discussion. It's been an amazing hour for all of us. And I also want to thank the participants for those great questions. And I want to make sure that all of you have an opportunity to voice your questions to our team. Thank you to the Out and Equal Conference attendees, and thank you for your commitment to the LGBTQ+ community. Have a great conference. Thanks very much. So are we clear?